Thank you for watching. Subscribe on Betrayed Man's Diary for more stories. I'll be honest with you up front, I'm not the perfect husband. I won't sit here and pretend I haven't made mistakes. I drank too much for too long. I wasn't always present. Not emotionally, not physically. We have 2 kids, and one of them's had major health problems since birth. Sometimes I just didn't have anything left to give. And instead of dealing with it, I numbed out. I tell you that first because I don't want this to read like a hit piece. I've failed, too. But I've never been unfaithful. Not once. And that's where the line lives for me. My wife, Karen, is the kind of woman people describe as the good one. Church on Sundays. Bake sales. Always remembers birthdays. Never late to anything, ever. I used to joke that if someone gave her a single jaywalking ticket, she'd break down in tears and hand them a handwritten apology card. We've been married for 23 years. Met in our early 30s. Fell fast, married faster. Until a few weeks ago, I would have told you with full confidence that she was loyal. Honest. Solid. Now I don't even know if I know the woman I married. It started with a lie so small, it almost didn't register. She said she was going to visit her mom for a few days. Totally normal. Her mom's getting older, needs more help. We've had this routine for years. Karen goes up, spends a week, comes home. I hold down the fort. But this time was different. She left Monday morning, texting updates like usual. Only something about them felt off. Stiff. Mechanical. Made it okay. Stopped for gas. Traffic's light. Then silence for most of Monday night. And I should clarify, she never does that. Karen texts me before bed every night, even if it's just a heart emoji. That night? Nothing. The next day, she called in the morning like nothing had happened. Said she was tired, that her mom's Wi-Fi was acting up. I nodded along, let it go. But something itched at the back of my brain. And by Wednesday, that itch turned into full-blown anxiety. I checked our joint credit card account. We don't use it often, but sometimes for gas or groceries while traveling. There was a charge for an Airbnb on Monday night. And not in her mom's city. This was 40 minutes south, a tourist town we've stayed in before for anniversaries. My hands went cold. Then I saw a second Airbnb charge. Friday night. Same city. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she stopped there for a night to break up the drive. Maybe her mom came with her. Maybe I was overthinking things. But it didn't make sense. So I did something I never thought I'd do, I hired a private investigator. Not some TV detective with a fedora and bad metaphors. Just a quiet, efficient guy a friend had used during his divorce. He got to work fast. And what he sent me crushed me. Security footage from the Airbnb's external camera showed Karen arriving Monday afternoon. Not alone. With a man. Tall, stocky, balding. They hugged. She smiled, the smile I used to get. The one that said I'm safe here. They brought one suitcase. They didn't leave the property again until late the next morning. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She froze. Then broke. She cried. Told me his name was David. That they'd known each other when she was 15 and he was 18, her high school boyfriend. First love, type of story. She said they hadn't spoken in decades, but reconnected online last year. That he went through a divorce. That she just needed someone to talk to. Someone safe, she said. She told me they stayed in the Airbnb on Monday night, but nothing happened except a kiss. That they spent Tuesday through Thursday at her mom's house. That she went back on Friday to see him again. That they laid in bed and talked for hours. That he touched her, yes. Pants were off, yes. But, nothing else happened. She said she broke down in tears and stopped everything. That she felt sick. That it wasn't her. She begged me to believe it was just an emotional affair. A mistake. That it wasn't sex. That it wasn't love. That it ended there and then. And maybe, I would have believed her. If I hadn't already seen the video of them kissing in the driveway like they were teenagers again. I've replayed the conversation 100 times since that night. The way she looked at me when I showed her the footage. Like a child caught sneaking out past curfew. Scared. Guilty. Not because she hurt me, but because she got caught. That's the part that broke something deep in me. She didn't confess. She reacted. And you don't react to something you weren't trying to hide. I asked her when it started. She told me they reconnected online, some old friend's Facebook group or a birthday comment that turned into messages, then into emails, then into phone calls. Said it started innocent. Just two old flames catching up. He understood me, she said. He remembered me before life got complicated. Before kids. Before bills. Before. She didn't finish that sentence. But I knew what the last word was. Before you. Look, I get it. I haven't been a great partner. There were nights I drank myself into sleep. Times I shut down emotionally. Weeks I became just a pair of hands that carried stress and forgot how to carry love. I've apologized for that. I've worked on it. Sobriety hasn't been perfect, but I've fought like hell for it. For her. For us. But this? This wasn't a breakdown. This was deliberate. She planned 2 separate nights away with another man. Paid for lodging. Packed a bag. Slept in his arms. Let him touch her, with her pants off. And then she sat in front of me and said, I needed to feel wanted. That line landed like a knife. Because that's what cheaters say, right? They need connection. They need understanding. They need. And somehow, it's always your fault that they found it somewhere else. I asked her if they had sex. She swore on everything, the kids, her mother, even the ring on her finger, that they didn't. That's not who I am, she said. And maybe she believes that. But what I know is this, it's who she became. For at least 2 nights, she became the kind of woman who leaves her husband to hold sick kids while she finds comfort in another man's bed. I know that's harsh. But you don't get to kiss someone in secret, strip down, and then hide behind the idea that your heart was confused. He wasn't a therapist. He wasn't a priest. He was an ex-boyfriend, from high school, who hadn't seen her in 30 years and somehow still ended up with his hands on her. The worst part? She talked about him like he was a wounded animal. He's been through a lot. He hasn't been with anyone since his divorce. He's a good man. She kept repeating that, he's a good man. And every time she said it, I felt like the floor was tilting under me. Because she wasn't defending herself. She was defending him. She told me she cut off all contact. That after that Friday night, she went back to her mom's, cried all night, and blocked his number. That she hadn't reached out since. And part of me wants to believe that. But part of me knows better. Because affairs don't die that cleanly. They linger. Like fog in a place you once called home. The private investigator confirmed there'd been no new meetings, no new messages he could find. No burner phones. No second email accounts. But that doesn't mean it's over. It just means it's dormant. And a dormant flame still burns if you feed it the right oxygen. I started sleeping in the guest room. Told the kids it was my snoring again. Karen didn't fight me on it. Didn't beg me to come back. She just, let me go. Which says more than she ever could. Some nights, I lie awake staring at the ceiling fan, wondering what would have happened if I hadn't checked the credit card. If I'd just believed the story. If I'd been a little more trusting. Would she have told me eventually? Would it have escalated? Would she be in his bed again? There's no way to know. But what I do know is this. I didn't find the affair. I found the end of it. And that's what terrifies me most. Once the shock wore off, I started thinking in questions. How did they reconnect? What did she tell him about me? How long had this been going on, really? And the one I couldn't shake. How much of my marriage had been real, and how much had been a performance? Because when someone cheats, it's not just the act that hurts. It's the retroactive erosion of every moment that came before it. Every, "I love you," feels like a lie. Every touch becomes suspicious. Even the memories that used to bring warmth now just sting with, was that the night she texted him under the covers. I started reviewing things, not as a husband, but as a detective. The late-night showers. The sudden urge to reconnect with old friends on Facebook. The new passwords on apps she never cared about before. Once, 2 months before the trip, she asked me what I thought about people staying in touch with their exes. I told her I didn't think it was a good idea, especially not if they were married. She just nodded. Said, "Yeah, I guess it depends on the person." Turns out, it did. And she wasn't the person I thought she was. I found out they'd reconnected almost a year before the Airbnb visit. Through some mutual friend tagging them both in a group post. She messaged him. Just a, "Hey, hope you're doing well." The kind of message you tell yourself is innocent when your gut already knows better. From there it escalated. Likes turned into comments. Comments into DMs. DMs into phone calls. Phone calls into secrets. All of it while I was right there, in the house. Doing dishes. Tucking our daughter in. Driving our son to doctor appointments. And she was texting him from the bathroom like it was a lifeline. She told me, after I pressed, that they'd been talking regularly for about 7 months before they met. Not every day, but often. Mostly about life, aging, missed opportunities. Things she didn't feel like she could talk to me about, apparently. I asked her, "Why not tell me you were reconnecting with him?" She looked at me like I'd asked the stupidest question on earth. "Because I knew you'd be upset." That's the answer cheaters always give. Not because it was wrong. Because they didn't want the consequences. She said he was her first love. That even though they only dated for 3 years in their teens, it always stayed with her. He was the first person who really saw me. I nodded. Bit my tongue. Because for 23 years, I've watched this woman wake up with no makeup and a migraine and still kissed her forehead before she left the bed. But sure. Some kid she dated when Reagan was president really saw her. The PI found a burner email account tied to a name that wasn't hers, but the recovery email was. They had exchanged photos. Some were just old pictures. Class reunion type stuff. But one wasn't. One was a selfie she took in our kitchen, wearing a shirt she told me she spilled coffee on and had to throw out. She didn't throw it out. She gave it a new life, as a fantasy prop for a man who wasn't her husband. I sat on the edge of the bed for hours with that photo on my screen. It wasn't graphic. But it was worse. Because it was personal. That angle. That shirt. That smile. It was the version of her that used to belong to me. And now I was watching her gifted to someone else like it never mattered. When I confronted her about the burner email, she didn't deny it. She said, "I made it so we wouldn't get caught." We. Like it was a shared crime. Like they were Bonnie and Clyde, hiding from the world. While I was downstairs folding laundry. I asked her, "Did you ever say you loved him?" Her eyes dropped. And that told me more than anything else. She didn't answer. But you don't avoid that question unless the answer kills whatever scraps of dignity you have left. I felt my throat tighten. I walked out of the room. Not because I couldn't yell. Because I didn't want her to hear the sound of me breaking. I thought betrayal would come like a thunderclap. But it's not like that. It's slow. It's seeing your toothbrush beside hers and wondering whose bed she imagined while brushing her teeth. It's hearing your child ask, "Why are you sleeping in the guest room again?" And you not having an answer. It's eating breakfast across from someone who's suddenly not real anymore. Like a stranger in a skin suit you used to love. By the end of that week, I stopped asking Karen questions. Not because I believed her. But because I didn't think I could handle hearing her tell another half-truth with the same trembling voice she once used to say, "I love you." There's a moment in every betrayal when the pain plateaus. You stop crying. You stop yelling. You stop scanning texts and receipts and start seeing the whole picture like a mural that was always painted, just behind the wallpaper of your own denial. That was me. Just sitting in that guest room, staring at the ceiling fan, knowing full well that even if she told me everything now, every message, every touch, every lie, it wouldn't undo a thing. She tried a few times that week. Little comments like, "I've been thinking about us a lot." Or, "Do you think there's a way back?" Once, I looked at her for a long time before saying anything. Then I just said, "You said you only kissed. Then you said he touched you. Then you said you touched him. Which part was the truth?" Her eyes went wide for a second, then glossed over. "All of it." I mean, it stopped there. I panicked. I cried. I felt so awful. I nodded. Not because I believed her. Because I finally understood that she believed herself. That's the difference between liars and people like Karen. Liars know what they're doing. Karen. She bends reality until it fits the version of herself she needs to see in the mirror to get through the day. I went for a drive that night. No destination. Just the road, the hum of tires, and that weight in my chest that wouldn't let up. I pulled into a gas station an hour out of town and just sat there, engine running, staring at my hands on the steering wheel. I remember thinking, is this it? Is this how it ends? With no screaming. No final act. Just quiet and guilt and empty promises. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. One to a lawyer. One to a therapist. Not because I knew what I wanted, but because I was tired of not knowing what to do. The lawyer was calm, professional. Said I didn't have to make any decisions right away. Just wanted me to know my rights. Gave me a checklist of documents to gather, should it come to that. The therapist, Dr. Myers, asked me one question during the intake that hit like a freight train. If she had never been caught, would she still be doing it? I didn't answer. Didn't have to. We both knew. I started journaling after that. Something about putting thoughts down made the chaos feel less permanent. I wrote things like, "She didn't make a mistake. She made a series of conscious choices, each one more intimate than the last. You were not paranoid. You were observant. She doesn't get to use your absence as a justification for betrayal. That's not a trade, that's a cop-out." It helped. Not in a healing way. Not yet. But it made the noise in my head a little quieter. The next weekend, she made breakfast like she always used to. Pancakes. Bacon. Orange juice with too much pulp, the kind I hated. She sat down across from me, tried to smile, and said, "I miss us." I looked at her and said, "You missed the version of me that didn't know." Her face crumpled. But again, not from guilt. From being seen. "We haven't told the kids." "Not yet. They're young. Too young to understand that sometimes love breaks quietly in the next room while they're watching cartoons. But they know something's wrong. Kids always do. My daughter asked me the other night, 'Why don't you and Mom laugh anymore?' I didn't know how to answer. So I said the only thing that felt true. Sometimes people hurt each other. And they don't know how to fix it. She nodded, like she understood more than she should. Karen keeps saying it wasn't an affair. She uses phrases like emotional vulnerability and moment of weakness. She says it was a mistake. But let me say this. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something cruel in a moment of anger. What she did was a decision. Booked travel. Confirmed the address. Packed a bag. Got in a car. Drove to a man who wasn't her husband. Got undressed in a bed they shared. That's not a mistake. That's a story with chapters. And I'm just now realizing I wasn't even in the last one. By week 3, something in me had started to calcify. The grief didn't hit as hard. The anger was still there, but dull now, not sharp like it had been when I first saw that security footage. What replaced it was something colder, quieter, and, frankly, more dangerous. Curiosity. Because the more time passed, the more I realized Karen had only given me the version of the story she thought I could survive. Not the truth. And I couldn't stop wondering, what else didn't she tell me? She said the affair, she still wouldn't call it that, ended the second night. That she cried, that guilt overwhelmed her, and that she cut off all contact. But if that was true, why did I keep finding threads? Like the shirt she said she threw away that I found folded at the back of her drawer. Or the Spotify playlist called L+D//1990, filled with songs she never once played around me. Or the notebook in the back of her closet. That was the one that cracked the door open. It was a plain, nondescript black moleskine. Looked like something she'd use for grocery lists or quick journaling. But when I opened it, it wasn't grocery lists. It was letters. To him. Dozens of them. Some dated months before the trip. Others after. She never sent them, or maybe she copied them down from messages she did send and then deleted. They weren't sexual. They were worse. They were intimate. Things like, I forget who I am when I'm not around you. He doesn't notice me anymore, but you see every part. You remind me of the girl I used to be, before life buried her. And then, this one, undated, crumpled in the corner of a page. I'm afraid that if I spend one more night with you, I won't come home. I sat on the floor of our bedroom with that notebook in my lap, stunned. Not because I thought she was lying. But because I realized something far worse. She had already left me. Emotionally. Mentally. Long before that Airbnb. She was only still physically here because her conscience hadn't caught up to her body yet. That was the twist. It wasn't that she cheated on a whim or got caught up in a reckless moment of nostalgia. It was that she planned an escape. She was emotionally halfway out the door before I ever noticed the knob turning. I confronted her that night. Not with anger. Just the notebook. I placed it on the kitchen counter while she was pouring tea. She froze when she saw it. Didn't touch it. Didn't even ask how I found it. She just said, I wrote those when I was confused. I replied, you weren't confused. You were choosing. She didn't deny it. Didn't say a word for a long time. Then she sat down and whispered, I didn't think you'd find that. There it was. The truth, unfiltered. She never expected to get caught. And she definitely didn't expect me to keep digging after she gave me her version. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because I was okay. But because I finally had something real. Not just her apology. Not just her spin. Her truth. In her own handwriting. And the truth? It was uglier than I imagined. But at least it was mine now. A week later, another twist. I was at the grocery store when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Checked it in the parking lot. Hey. I'm sorry to reach out. My name is Emily. I think my dad might be the man your wife was seeing. David. I don't know what's going on, but I found messages from a woman named Karen on his old phone, and some of it's weird. I nearly dropped the phone. His daughter. She left a callback number and said she'd only found the phone recently while helping him clean out his storage unit. He apparently had a second line, an old Android he kept in a box, still working, still logged in. And he never told Karen it was still active. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. I waited until after dinner to call Emily. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I didn't want to hear what I already suspected while standing in a grocery store parking lot. I needed to be grounded. Alone. Clear-headed. I dialed her number just after 9 p.m. She picked up on the second ring. Hello. Emily. It's James. Yeah. Thanks for calling. Her voice was cautious, but kind. You could tell she'd gone back and forth a dozen times before reaching out. I appreciated that. This wasn't easy, for either of us. She told me her father, David, had passed away unexpectedly 2 weeks earlier from a heart condition. She'd been going through his things, trying to clear out a storage unit he'd barely touched in years, when she found the phone. Not his primary phone. A secondary line, one he apparently hadn't used in months. Until around the time of the Airbnb visits. Emily said she almost threw it away, but something made her plug it in. There was no lock screen. Inside were text threads, saved voicemails, and a few unsent drafts. One name stood out, Karen. I didn't read everything, she said, but it was clear they had history. Some of it sounded heavy. Like he was in love with her or trying to be. I asked if she still had the phone. She did. She offered to send screenshots of a few key messages. I told her I wasn't sure if I wanted to see them. But we both knew I did. I gave her my email. Then thanked her, sincerely. Because it couldn't have been easy to call the husband of the woman your father had an affair with. She was graceful. I hung up with a pit in my stomach. And within 10 minutes, the screenshots arrived. I opened them slowly. Each one was a gut punch. Messages from David to Karen. You don't have to choose yet. Just say you want me to wait, and I will. The way you looked at me Friday night, I've never felt that safe with anyone. When you kissed me in the kitchen, I wanted to stop time. I wanted that to be our real life. But then there were hers. I can't stop thinking about you touching me. I keep reliving that moment. Being with you felt like waking up after a long sleep. Sometimes I imagine not going back. Just staying. Just being with you. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't emotional confusion. This wasn't guilt. This was planning. This was a fantasy life. One where I didn't exist. But one message destroyed me. Undated. Maybe never sent. Just sitting in his drafts. I know you won't leave him. But if you do, I'll be waiting. Always. He wasn't a predator. He wasn't innocent either. He was ready. She didn't walk away from the affair because she was overwhelmed with guilt. She walked away because she got caught. Or maybe because she couldn't bring herself to follow through, not yet. I showed her the messages the next morning. She went pale. Didn't deny a single word. She said, I was in love with the idea of him. Not him. It wasn't real. But it was real. Real enough to sneak away. Real enough to text from burner phones. Real enough to want to leave me. She just didn't. And not because of some moral compass, because the fantasy fell apart when the risk got too real. I don't know what broke more that day, my heart or my sense of reality. Because I finally understood. This wasn't about what happened in a bed for 2 nights. It was about what she built, secretly, while sharing my life. She constructed a whole emotional world with another man. Then tried to come back like nothing had shifted. But I knew now. Everything had shifted. It's weird how fast your mind starts splitting time into before and after. Before I knew about David. Before I found the Airbnb receipts. Before Emily called. And now. After. After the final confirmation. After the last denial died in her throat. After I couldn't even look at her without hearing the words she wrote to another man. She didn't say, "I'm sorry," anymore. She said things like, "I was in pain. I didn't think you'd ever find out." It felt like a dream, not real life. What she meant was, it was real. I just didn't want to deal with the consequences. The next therapy session was cold. Dr. Myers asked us to speak plainly. No more soft pedaling. No more trying to spare feelings. So I did. I told her I didn't think I trusted her anymore. That I didn't think I'd believe her even if she begged. That I didn't think I could ever look at her again without seeing the version of her who wrote, "I keep reliving that moment." Karen cried. Said she'd do anything to prove she was done with that life. That she wanted to rebuild. But there was no foundation left. It had all burned in the fire she swore was just smoke. I started making logistical changes. Moved my clothes fully into the guest room. Created a separate bank account. Started keeping a list of what we'd need to split if it came to that: house, insurance, car titles, vacation times with the kids. Karen noticed. She didn't ask me to stop. She just started shrinking. Like she already knew the sentence, and we were just waiting for the verdict to be read. One night, while the kids were asleep, she came into the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed. She looked thinner. Quieter. Her hands trembled slightly. "I want to tell you something," she said. I nodded. She told me she'd written a letter to David. One she never sent. One she kept in the glove compartment of her car, hidden, like everything else. "I never mailed it," she said. "But I need you to read it. It's the last part of this I'm still holding on to." I hesitated. But curiosity, that old familiar ache, won out. The next day, I took her keys and found the letter. It wasn't long. Just a single page. But it wrecked me in a new, unexpected way. Not because it was passionate. But because it was disappointed. I thought we'd be magic. But we were just two people running from our own failures, trying to find something that didn't exist anymore. Maybe never did. You made me feel wanted. But not safe. Not loved. Just, seen. And it turns out, that's not enough. I don't regret meeting you again. But I regret forgetting who I was before you. I folded it back up. Sat in the driveway for 20 minutes with it in my lap. Because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel rage. I felt relief. It was over. Not just the affair. The illusion. Karen had put it on paper, her own confession that this wasn't love. That it wasn't destiny. That she wasn't going to leave me for him because he never really had her either. She had run toward him not because of who he was, but because of what she thought she'd lost in herself. And now? There was nothing left to chase. That night, I sat across from her in the living room. She asked me what I thought. I said, "I think you lied to both of us. But at least you stopped." Then I added, "That doesn't mean I can stay." She didn't argue. She just said, "I'll miss what we were. Even if I ruined it." And I said, "So will I." I didn't leave right away. Even after everything, I stayed a few more weeks. Part of me thought maybe time would do something magic, smooth the jagged edges, help me forget the parts one didn't want to remember. I kept waiting for that morning where I'd wake up and not hate her presence in the house. It didn't come. What came instead were more quiet meals, more careful conversations, more fake smiles for the kids. We weren't fixing anything. We were stalling. And I wasn't even angry anymore. Just done. I told her on a Thursday afternoon. We were folding laundry, of all things. One of those small, neutral routines that felt like pretending nothing had ever happened. And that's when I realized, I hated the pretending more than the betrayal. So I said it. I want a separation. Her hands didn't stop moving. She just nodded slowly and whispered, "Okay." No fight. No theatrics. Because deep down, she knew. She wasn't losing a husband that day. She'd lost him the moment she booked that first Airbnb. This was just the paperwork catching up. The kids took it hard. Of course they did. We kept it age appropriate. Told them we were going to live in separate places for a while to make things better for everyone. There were tears. Confusion. The guilt hit like a tidal wave. But weirdly, not because I was leaving her. Because I hadn't done it sooner. Because for the last few years, I hadn't been the version of me they deserved either. I'd been distant, tired, emotionally numbed by stress, addiction, and routine. And Karen, well, she'd filled that silence with another voice. We were both at fault. Just not equally. I moved into a small rental 2 towns over. Nothing fancy, a 1-bedroom with old carpet and weirdly low ceilings. But it was mine. Quiet. Honest. The first night I slept there, I lay on the floor for a long time. No mattress yet. Just me, a box fan, and the hum of my own thoughts. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath. I just felt still. Karen and I spoke occasionally. Logistics mostly, school schedules, bills, pickups. She didn't push for reconciliation. She just started existing as someone next to me instead of across from me. A co-parent. A chapter. Not the story. One evening, I got a message. From Emily again, David's daughter. She'd been going to therapy too. Said our conversation had been a weird turning point in her grieving process. That she'd realized her father wasn't the man she thought he was. Not a villain, but not the lonely, honorable figure he pretended to be either. "I'm sorry you got dragged into all this," she wrote. I told her the truth. "You didn't drag me anywhere. He didn't either. Karen walked me here. I just didn't want to see the road." She thanked me. And that was it. Just closure from someone I never expected to be part of my life, but who helped end a story I never asked to be written. Some days, I missed the old life. Not her. Just the idea of having someone. The routine. The way you assume someone will always be there, no matter how quietly they're already leaving you. But mostly, I feel lighter. And that's something no apology could ever give me. A year has passed. One full rotation around the sun since I found that Airbnb charge. Since the lie cracked open. Since everything I thought I knew about my wife, about our marriage, came undone like threads pulled from a sweater I wore too long without noticing the holes. You think the day you find out is the worst part. It's not. The worst part is what happens after. The rewiring. The silence. The remembering. And eventually, the rebuilding. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful now. Not for what happened. But for what it revealed. Because before the affair, I was disappearing. Into alcohol. Into apathy. Into a version of manhood that confused endurance with presence. I thought showing up physically was enough, even when I was checked out emotionally. Karen stepped out of the marriage. Yes. But I had been stepping out of myself long before she did. That doesn't excuse her betrayal. But it does explain the vacuum she filled with someone else. I'm sober now. 1 year, 2 months, 16 days. I count because I need to. Because every day I don't drown is a day I prove to myself that I can float, even when the weight of memory tries to pull me under. I see my kids more than ever. We split custody cleanly. No custody battles. No screaming matches. Just two people who ruined something sacred and are now trying not to ruin the people they love most. I've dated. Nothing serious. But enough to remind me that affection can be genuine again. That not every good morning text comes with an aftertaste of guilt. That someone new can touch your hand without reminding you of the hand that let go. I'm not in love. But I'm not afraid of it anymore. And that, for me, is the real victory. Karen and I had coffee last week. Just two adults who used to build dreams together, now exchanging polite stories about parent-teacher conferences and dental appointments. She looked tired. But lighter. She told me she was moving out of the house. Said it was too full of ghosts. I get that. She asked if I hated her. I said no. And I meant it. Because hating her would mean I still lived inside that chapter. And I don't. I walked out of those pages a long time ago. Sometimes I drive past that town, the one where the Airbnb was. The one that used to feel like a place of celebration and now lives like a scar. I don't flinch anymore. I don't imagine them in that room. I don't wonder what music played or what shirt she wore or how long they kissed before guilt turned into regret. I just drive. And I'm okay. To anyone reading this who's been betrayed. You will feel like you're dying. You're not. You'll feel like you can never trust again. You will. You'll think you'll never smile without bitterness again. But one day, you will catch yourself laughing at something small, and it won't hurt. And you'll realize, that moment right there. That was healing. Not some big revelation. Just life, continuing. Without her. Without him. With you. So here it is, in the simplest terms. She betrayed me. She touched someone else. She built a secret world in a space where I thought I was safe. And I survived it. Not with revenge. Not with cruelty. But with truth. And in the end, that's all I needed. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more dramatic tales.